kind of low.
You go there.
Raise that chair.
Get a cushion.
I just need to raise it.
You want somebody to work the thing that laptop for you? While
No, that's even lower.
Yeah, that's even lower. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
You want somebody to
know how to do it.
You can help me out?
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna first pass out some. This is a letter for those of you. Take one and pass it around. And I want everybody to be able to take some notes this time. You have been taking notes. I've been watching.
Move. Thank you very much.
This is kind of weird to go after all those great presentations that went before. I feel like, oh man, I should have went last night. And I'm so happy to be a part of a group with people who are so passionate and knowledgeable about everything that they're doing. And I'm glad to just be able to add my 2 cents to this whole thing. So what I want you guys to do first is I want you to write on the back of the paper, if you don't have a notebook paper, 3 reasons why you think you need to be educated. 3 reasons what education is for. Let me put it like that. Give you a couple minutes. I'll give you 1 minute and write down what you think education is for. This will be collected and graded. So, no, just kidding.
Seriously, you got a calendar.
No, I think that's just one.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it.
That's right. We'll work through it.
Hopefully. Okay, so you can still keep on writing if you're still thinking. My name is Shandra Witherspoon, and as I said earlier, I'm an educator. And what I believe my mission is, and what I think God called me to do, is to educate our people, young and old, so that we can do what we need to do to establish ourselves in our rightful place. And to be a force that people need not only to reckon with, but appreciate. Because after all, we do lead in almost everything that we do. I heard Naeem Akbar a while ago said that people copy us, whether it be good stuff or bad stuff. Either way, they're copying black folk. So one of the things that I want to do is to talk about what it means, and I'm going to go back to your questions about what it means to be educated and what you think it's for. But I also want you to think about this other question. What is the difference between conscious and conscientious? All right. When we're conscious, and I'm going to preface it by saying a lot of times we have these expectations of ourselves and our people that everybody already knows things. But I think what we fail to realize is everybody does not already know the things that they need to know. And one of the things that I think people aren't really understanding is, what does it mean to even be conscious in the first place? We have to overcome all the systematic things that have been done to us over the whole time we are in this country. The brainwashing, the poisoning, the vaccinations, all those things that have diminished who we are as a people and our spirit and our ability to think. And so what I want to do, and I heard a couple of times people were like word warriors, and they like words. So do I. And what does it mean? What do these things mean? So I was thinking about consciousness, because one time Baba Jim has sent out a response to people not being conscious. And I responded to him, or people who say they're conscious, but they don't behave in the way we think conscious people should behave. And I sent back a message to him, and I said, you know what? Everybody doesn't know what consciousness is. We make an assumption that when you say I'm conscious, I'm down with the cause, right on, brother, sister. That's it. That's all I need to do. I'm done. But they don't understand what consciousness actually is. So to be conscious is to be alert, to be aware of one's surroundings, not unconscious.
All right.
All right? Now let's think about conscientious. And conscientiousness is a thing I think we're really striving for. To be conscientious is one who is concerned with doing what is right, who will carry out his duties, who will put forth much effort. A lot of times when we're thinking about being conscious, okay, I bought my t-shirt, I get on the conference calls, I say power to the people. That's all that's expected of me. But I think what we really want, and what I really appreciate about this movement, is the fact that both Baba G and Baba Jim have said, we're not going to beg and control people. Come on, please, please, be a part of the 1 million, please, please, because it's like whosoever will. Come forth and do what you need to do, because this is what we want people to do. We want you to carry out, do what you say you're going to do, and put forth your best effort. And one of the things that I want us to do when we're talking to people is to be mindful. And this is one of the reasons why I think education is so important. Everybody isn't where we are. Now, long time ago, when I was teaching in the District of Columbia Public School System, I had this big expectation about how we as educators, especially because it was predominantly black teachers, can move our students from point A to point B. And I remember this one well-meaning white person said to me, you have to take small steps and accept the small accomplishments as you do one step at a time. And I kept thinking about that, and I kept thinking about that, but I never could reconcile to being willing to lose one. Even though I know that happens, don't get me wrong, I know it's going to happen. Some people don't fall away, some people don't want to be a part of it. That's just a natural thing that's going to happen. But I feel like we always have to be willing to try to pull them into the boat. Pull them in and keep them from sinking. Because some people just don't know. And as I kept living, I remember when I was younger, I used to have all these ideas about people. And my grandmother used to always say, keep a living. And I would say, people shouldn't be, and I was just like this. People should do this, that, and the third. She said, keep a living. Keep a living. And as you keep living, you start realizing how people are. That being said, that does not mean that this movement can't go on and do exactly what we wanted to do, and that we can't bring people along where we want to through education. So why? I say what we need, according to Amos Wilson, and I totally agree with him, we need an education that's relevant. Something that has something to do with us. Up until now, most of the educational process has been to make us fit into their society.
Right.
It's to teach us to do what we're told to do and not question it. And if you're a good person, you get an A. If you're a good person, you can get a scholarship. If you're obedient and compliant and good, we might even let you be executive chief operating officer under the person who's going to tell you what to do. So our education needs to be relevant. It has to maintain the survival of our people, and it needs to advance the interests of our people. So that's why we need African-centered education. So one of the goals for African-centered education is to advocate for and support parental choice. One of the things I think is really vital is that parents don't understand really what their role is in this educational process. I remember when I was a young new mother, the only thing that I thought my job was, and I call myself being a good parent, was preparing, letting my children get enough to eat, sleep, well-dressed, keep them, and then take them to the schoolhouse and hand them over to these people who I thought had their best interests in mind. That's what I thought as a parent. Well, I gave a small illustration about the negativity that went on, and I realized, oh no, this educational process has a lot to do with me, because I also had to end up trying to deprogram my children when they came home as to why they were the way they are. Skin color, hair texture, things that we do and enjoy as a people versus things they do and enjoy as a people. So I realized that I'm the educator. I'm the first educator, and parents are the first educator in their children's life. That's why we need to educate parents that they have a choice of where they want to have their children educated, and don't just take them to the schoolhouse, drop them off, and go about your business. See, parents of children pre-K, they have to have an active role in fostering high-quality education. Now, I'm saying this hand in hand because I believe, and we talked about this earlier about how we have this spiral of children raising children, so that we really don't have people who have a good grasp on what it is to be a parent. So what we have to do is have parents have a proactive role when they're looking for quality education. Once when I was in school, I remember when we were talking about what does it mean to be an A? What is an A to you? This teacher says what an A is to them, this teacher was an A. And a lot of times an A here is not the same A there. And just because your kid comes home with an A does not mean they're getting a quality education. Sometimes because we've been indoctrinated, our kid comes home with a report card full of A, yes. Now, right now I'm teaching at Prince George's Community College, and I see both people who did not get their high school diplomas and people who are coming in for the first time who had A's on their report cards, who can't really read and write proficiently, who can't represent themselves articulately, who cannot add and subtract and do math so that they can monitor their money, understand what's going on. So an A, you have to be aware, is an A an A? Are we getting a quality education? Parents, another thing that I'm passionate about, and that goes along with having charter schools. I think parents should have access to vouchers so that they can choose which school they want to take their kid to, the one that's most appropriate for them. So you can take that $7,000, $15,000 to their school, and this school that's going to do the best to educate your child will have the money to do so that you don't always have to be under the mercy of whoever decides to open a charter school or what's in your area or what lottery that you have to try to get in to make it happen. And these vouchers need to be equivalent per student to the same money the public school gets per child. It needs to be the same amount so that we can provide. Because when you see people who are passionate about the education of our children, they're not spending a whole lot of money on overhead. They don't have top heavy salaries where you see the principal and the administrator making all this money, and then the parent has to bring toilet paper to the school because they're not allocating the money for that. Another goal is to secure financial appropriation of resources to parents in independent African-centered schools. This comes back to the public policy thing that I think that Monica was talking about earlier, because one thing that has to happen is while we approach people to give us these things, it needs to be appropriated. That means that, yes, I agree with your position. We go to them, bring the plan. Yes, well, but if no money is behind it, it's not going to happen. But we need to make sure that they're going to appropriate resources. They're going to give the money, open it up, and make it available and access to people for parents, and they want to go to independent schools. Also, we advocate for economic resources to, do it again. This is what I said. Next, to ensure legislation that does not make laws that bind unscrupulous medical practices with some vaccines with educational opportunities. I remember when they came out with that vaccine, I don't know if you guys remember, for teenage girls that they wanted to give. Untested, but they wanted to say, okay, all these girls need to take this vaccine to go to school. And they're coming in and they're trying to tie that to your enrollment. So they say, you know, here's the list of vaccines that you're supposed to have. Do you have this? Do you have that? And I think that one of the things that we need to make sure is that we don't want to be held hostage by some legislation that says we need to continue to be poisoned by whatever things they're going to come up with, these drug companies come up with to inoculate our children. Even though the CDC, when they found out that the things that they were putting in vaccines was causing harm to African American boys, they knew this thing. But still, when it's time to enroll in school, you have to bring your vaccination or your vaccinations up. Well, I think we should put a halt to that. We need to make sure that you don't have to. You can opt out. And especially if you want to go to the African Center School. Also, okay, go ahead. Also, now, I have an ought against special education. Not because special education, for whatever reason, and Baba G was mentioning the high end and the low end of the student, not because you might want to allocate funds or resources to a person who is gifted and talented or a person who is struggling, but the way it is now, it just undermines the educational process. It seeks to medicate the student. It serves as a gateway for the incarceration of black boys and girls into prison. Because when I used to have students be pulled out, and I used to argue this point, I have some students, for some reason, they got on the special education list. And I would say, well, I don't think they need to go. They don't need to be pulled out right now. Okay, well, they're on the list. They have to go. You have to do this. You're in DC public schools. Okay. Then they would come back to me. Maybe I'm doing math when they're pulled out. They're supposed to get math services when they're being pulled out. They come back with these fantastic coloring sheets. They come back with candy. They come back with puzzles and games. And so I'm like, so what did you do when you went there? Oh, we got to play with Miss So-and-so. We got to do this. They even were playing video games and all that kind of stuff. I said, that's crazy. That is crazy. But because it's not monitored, and I believe because people really don't care what happens to our kids, that's right. All things go on in the school that parents don't really know about. So I want to, I think we should dismantle the current special education program because they're undereducated, they're miseducated, parents are encouraged, and I didn't know that parents were paid to get their kids in special education. I really didn't know that for a long time. So if I go to the parent and says, you know, you can get this disability because your son has done A, B, or C, or your daughter's doing A, B, and C. And a lot of times that A, B, and C was they weren't being compliant, or they were misbehaving, or they were doing whatever it is they were doing, and then we will give you a monthly stipend. And at one school in D.C., they paid the students to come. And it was a special education type school or an alternative school. They paid them to come on a daily basis. You got a weekly check, and it was crazy to find out that a lot of parents were making their kids go to school, true enough, but only to get that check. And when the students went to school, they were hanging out in the halls, they weren't learning anything, they weren't doing anything that they needed to do. So I think that we really need to step away from any system that is going to keep pushing us into a permanent underclass. Okay. So what? So what? I think we need to create a consortium of African-centered education for children of African descent. Go ahead. And this consortium will be established to build and maintain and facilitate a network of black educators, schools, families, community organizers that function as a think tank for the development and the conservation of African-centered education. Now, we need to centralize our efforts. So the purpose of the consortium would be to create a vehicle for all organizations. Right now, we have a lot of us are doing things in different areas. And it would be great, and I think more powerful once we can centralize that and know, I want to know what you're doing in St. Louis. I want to know what you're doing in Indianapolis. What resources are there in Florida? What resources are in D.C.? So we can develop a vehicle that we can ensure that our students, young and old, are educated. And what they need educated for, they need to think critically. Critical thinking has gone by the wayside. They need to act collectively. And I think acting collectively is one of the things that we seek to see even adults do. Let's do things as a collective and work responsibly. And I think we don't do this thing because we don't know. And for a long period of time, we have been miseducated to think, do for yourself. And I partly think that comes from seeing over and over and over things done to black people who step out, seeing things done. They can be killed, they can be tortured, and then it seems like no one helps them. They're just out there by themselves. And then the next person starts, I'm going to back up because, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to get all like that. So we need to change this thing. So 1 million conscious black voters and contributors will create groups that research, monitor, and evaluate proposed legislative actions that's coming down. We need to do this thing. We must educate our people on the political practices and strategies used by the government of the United States. I was mentioning, I think yesterday, in school, when I was going to school, I learned about government, civics, economics, science, math, reading, critical thinking, home ec, all these things so that I can be a functional citizen in this community. Right. Nowadays, the thing that they really only try to teach kids, math and reading. Mm-hmm. If I teach you to read and barely read and barely do some math, then you're going to come in, and then that makes you a good worker bee. That really sets you up to be the person to do what I tell you to do. Because you're not thinking about anything. As a matter of fact, don't question me. Read this. We start with the educators. The educators aren't allowed to question what's going on. If you want to have your job, and I mentioned this before, once you get a house and a mortgage, you want your job. Mm-hmm. So that's going to tie your hands about how much you're willing to step out there. And then we are left to do nothing. But we need to effectively leverage our voting power so that and they need to know how the process really works. When I was in California, I raised my kids in California, and I learned really about the legislative power when I decided one time to run for city council. I had no idea, didn't even know anything like that. I said, look, I can do as good as these people can do because they're not doing anything. And so I stepped out there and I started running for city council. Now I made one mistake because I was a novice to this whole thing. But I really thank God for not letting me win this position. But I came close. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a budget. I made some flyers, copied them off at Kinko's, got some other black people with me. We distributed them. I was able to, and because I was the only black person running, that made me notable. Mm-hmm. So then I started getting calls from the police chief. Because some of my thing was, you're abusing our kids, they're in school not getting an education, they're being harassed by the police, so they said, okay, let's corral her. She's not like them other niggas, mm-hmm. right? Let's bring her in, she can be reasoned with. So I started meeting the people on the city council, learning about this, public works. I was like, wow, all this stuff is available. And what I started realizing is we do have power. Politically, if we know how to use it. I mentioned that when my kids were not doing well in school, I said I was going to pull them out. So when I went to the school board, I said, I'm pulling them out. They were like, no, you can't pull them out. I said, not. So some other parents were with me. It was 13 of us in total. A group of 13 parents. We went to the city council. And we just said, we're going to pull them out. And because they were receiving Title I funds, they said, don't go, don't go. What can we do to help serve you? So what they ended up doing was whatever we asked them to do, which was, and I mentioned before, I had a school in my house, the school, Nia Learning Academy, and I just said, give us all the materials that we need. And fortunately, because they never dealt with this issue, they just gave me money so I could go buy the curriculum that I needed. I was buying African-centered curriculum, teaching the kids everything that they needed to do. And I realized that on the local level, not so much on the national level right away, but certainly we can make a difference on the local level if we know what we're doing, which is so critical not to just cast a ballot, just like Sister Monica said. We're not just so happy, ooh, they're letting us vote now, but what are you voting for? And can you articulate what you need? Which is why when this came in front of me, I was like, I'm in right away. Because we have a platform. This is what you need to do for us. And it's continually developing and something that we need. So we need to leverage our voting power. And we must strategize about which issues need to be addressed, when, where, and how. We just don't go out there willy-nilly, but we think about this thing. We strategize, we plan. Also, we must establish and train a delegation of analysts. And I think it was Brother Marcus who was saying we need lobbyists. I don't know who was saying we need our own lobbyists. But we need to train a delegation of analysts in every state who can be called on to educate our members on current issues so that our voting bloc is exponentially maximized. Like she said, no voting just cuz. We must be taught the need for a collective agenda. Even for those who are ready, willing, and conscious, this education system is designed to create people who just going to do what they told. Worker bees, widgets. And I don't know if you guys have noticed how they've changed some of the language that they use when they talk about people and workers, and now that we're called human capital.
Yeah.
And when that came about, I was saying human capital. Sounds a whole lot like slavery, but it also sounds a whole lot like how America used to be great. So what I say, those who are interested in coming into it, if you're interested, please contact me. Identify the area that you want to work on. Leave your contact information. We have a link up on the website right now where you can just say you want to be in the education committee. Now, I would like to get moving on this thing, to start talking about and building the things that I've outlined in this presentation. So I want you to do something.
Do something. That's right.
Do something, people. All right. Questions? It's kind of warm in here. People sleep.
Questions or comments?
Well, I'll comment because I definitely want to work with you with this because this is something that I'm really passionate about too. You mentioned a lot of things about the proposals and what our organization is about in regard to education. Did you have you thought about or put anything into the testing idea? Because with Common Core, FCAT, whatever the testing may be for the state, have we talked about a stance on testing?
I am totally against these arbitrary high-stakes testing tactics that they're doing. Because what it does is, and I was there, so when you start school in September, I need to start preparing you to pass this test that has nothing to do with what you know up until the testing date, which is usually in March. After March, I have a couple of months to teach you something. Prior to that, I need to prepare you to take a test. Most of the time, the test can't test what you know, and a lot of our students are not prepared for the test. Plus, it's an unfair burden on educators. Because instead of some people say, and I think I was talking to Brother Reggie before, he said, if I was getting to know some kids, I'm going to see where they are, try to feel out their interests, tailor my teaching to that. But as an educator now, you don't have time for that. The clock is ticking when you get into that classroom. They want to see some results. I want to see some practice tests. I want to see that you're moving towards the standard that they've created, which has nothing to do with whether we are equipped to read, to write, to articulate, to count proficiently. So when we go out there into the public, we're at the mercy of whoever tells us what to do because our kids have been trained. And unfortunately, even though our kids have been trained, they've given up. Too many have. So now when you talk to them, we also have to think about trying to bring them back in, away from this feeling of hopelessness. Like, whatever, I don't care. Like I see a lot of students, when I do adult education, students who haven't gotten their high school diploma, when they're coming in, the first thing that I ask, once you get your high school diploma, what are you going to do with it? So most people, I don't know, I'm just trying to get my high school diploma. Some is, I don't care, probation told me I need to be here. Some people say, my mother said, and you know how parents say, you ain't staying in here, you need to get out and do something else. So we have to shift that tide because we're losing too many. They're just wandering. They're at the mercy of television. They're at the mercy of craziness. We have students who so don't know what they do. So, here's something new to do. I think I want to dress up like a girl. I have guys who want to be women. And only thing I'm saying is that what's so bad about being a guy that you want to be a woman? And we don't even address those things. You know how Joy DeCruz was talking about the post-traumatic slave syndrome and how we never got help for that. Dr. Welsing said we never got debriefed for this terrorism that was committed against us ever since and still now while we're here. We're terrorized all the time by police. We're terrorized by a lot of stuff. But we don't get to debrief that. You get to stuff it. So when we see parents medicating themselves with alcohol and drugs, and it's trickling down to the kids medicating themselves with alcohol, drugs, and sex. Because if I can't do anything else to make me feel good, sex does, which helps us create more kids that are not being parented, and the cycle continues on and on. So we have to get in that and stop that. Stop letting them tell us what we need to do with our kids. Because we've listened. We don't discipline them anymore because they say we shouldn't do that. We don't guide them anymore because they're free spirits. We don't tell them how to dress or what to do. And not that we need to be controlling them, but our people are not puppies. A dog has a litter, licks it, and moves on. We're not that. We're not supposed to have our children and leave them to themselves. Okay, now go ahead on, We have parents. I tell my parents sometimes, when children turn 12, people think 12, 13, 14, they can be independent. But I try to tell them, it's just like a baby. When you have a baby, you as the parent have to teach that child everything that they need to do to maneuver through the world, what not to touch, what not to eat, what not to do, for being a child. But when a child becomes a preteen, you then have to teach them how to be young adults. They don't automatically know what to do.
True.
They don't know what to do with that. But we let them try to experiment. So it ends up being one person teaching the next person what to do. Come here, let me show you. This is what we could be doing. We don't need to listen. We can go here. We can do that. Getting in trouble. We find that we get in so much trouble, and of course the prison system is happy because we can get in trouble at the age of 12 and 13 and get some life imprisonment, or even if we get 10 or 20 years, enough time to work and bring money back to the plantation. Not that we call it a plantation anymore. We know that's what it is because now prisons are competing with private industry. And when you have a prison competing with private industry where you don't have to pay your worker, what does that remind you of?
Slavery.
And not only that, I've allowed prisons to become privatized. So and I also thought about this. This is an aside. I think we should open up some prisons, not because I believe in prisons, but so that we can train and teach our people to get out of that mess. Because they have them go to prison. We're going to keep you all your young life when you can work and you can build whatever it is we're building, and then send you out there for you to do what? Get in trouble. You don't know how to behave. You don't know how to act. You don't know how to acclimate back into the transition. And not only that, I have said to you, if you get in trouble, you can't get housing. You can barely get a job. Don't look for food stamps. Don't try to get on public assistance. So what are you going to do?
Commit a crime.
Because what can you do?
Can't do nothing.
What can you do? So we have to get involved in educating our people, and educating on so many levels, because I want us to know that education is not just ABCs 1, 2, 3. It's also, how do I get along with one another? I really have learned from Sister Monica. I'm going to steal her thing about we have to have a love affair, pretend like it's my own Sister Monica. That we have to have.
You welcome to it.
Thank you. That we should have a love affair with our people, and we have to love them even when they're not doing right. So that we can keep pulling them on. Because the establishment wants us to give up on them.
That's right.
Because that's just fodder. That's just fodder for the plantation. And make no mistake about it, the only way capitalism can work, the only way that system can work, is if somebody is working for free. You can't make a whole lot of money. I mean, there's no distinction. How can somebody be rich unless somebody is poor?
They don't want to give it to you.
How can it happen? So we have to really not only think about 1, 2, 3 ABCs, but just how we treat one another. That young brother who was here last night, your nephew, right? And we were saying, go forth and do what you need to do. But also, we need to, especially those who live in this area. He have a swim meet. We should be there.
That's right.
He needs to raise some money. We are contributing. He should not have to worry about anybody else validating his skills.
There you go.
We do that.
That's right.
We're there to validate your
That's right.
skills. We also need to do things like, and I think that because one of the things that we want to say is, how come when that sister who was killed in Virginia, remember when Gerald was asking people to contribute to the fund? And what? She hardly got any money. Because we don't know. That's what conscience is. It's not going, oh, that's too bad. I really feel for her. It's coming out your pocket and putting some money in the pot. It's giving to that situation. I don't know about you, but we used to in California, not so much here. Children would do fundraisers to raise money. They would go around as we're selling whatever widgets that they're going to be selling. And a lot of times I notice students don't get the support that they need from people. Can you get, no, no thank you. Can you, no, no thank you. I see them outside trying to sell their candy bars, and I'm making a point to buy something even if I don't want it. Because I want to see you being an entrepreneur. Right. I want to see you working for yourself. Even when I see people who come to the cars, and I know sometimes people think they're nuisances and they want to spray your window. And for $1, I don't know if they do that here in Florida, but they definitely do it in DC. For $1, I don't have a problem with that. Because while it might not be the standard you need to stay at, now you're working and you have it in your mind to work for what you need to have happen, as opposed to hitting me on the side of the head and trying to take it from you, right? Which is what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're going to do what we need to do. So I think that what we have to do is educate ourselves to do that. Bring ourselves back to family. Do we know what family means? I think that having this thing, I didn't attend the Philadelphia thing, and I really hated that I had to, but I'm a slave right now to my mortgage and my no. I don't have a mortgage, but I need that job. I need my day job, and I think that, and this is for those who don't come. You miss out on a lot of family building.
That's right.
Because when you're just here in this environment and you get to know one another, we can take down all those preconceived ideas, those barriers that really do exist. We've been taught not to like each other. We've been taught to be suspicious. We've been taught to keep our dollars to ourselves. We might not know when we're going to get another one. And I think that when we come together, though, we start breaking down those barriers. We start understanding what it means to love my brother, to love my sister, irrespective of their shortcomings. We have to realize that we can't always just, it's not going to happen the way I want it to, or the way you want it to. It's happening the way we need it to. This is what we need. And coming together, we can learn that. We build this movement that's going to take us forth. And it's a war out there. We're walking around, I tell some of my students all the time, you guys are piddling away. I meet with my students once a week, one day for math, one day for reading language arts. We get into the math class, they want to text, they want to hum, can I go to the bathroom, I want to be out. I said, look, you're coming here one day a week and you don't want to commit these 3 hours to that. Yet you want to, they have big dreams. So I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to be doing this, that, and the third, I'm going to create this. I said, but you don't want to put any time into making it happen? We got to change this thing. As a movement, we have to change it. In the educational system, we have to change it. In the family, we have to change it. This takes work, and it ain't easy. We got to roll up our sleeves. We have to sacrifice. One thing that I do like about when the pastor asked for money, he said, it's time for sacrificial giving. You will say that, right? You know, you're going to do sacrificial giving. That's okay, I understand that. It's time for sacrificial giving for us too. We need to sacrifice. We need to take a chance. Even if it means I can't live in this house that I really can't afford to live in, that's too much anyway, or this car that I really can't afford to buy because it spends too much gas anyway. We need to do that even if it means making some changes, some concessions. So that's what I think we have to do, yes.
Another light bulb went off. How much would it cost for us to be able to bring, like you said, you put down critical, collective, responsible, learn how to centralize our efforts, bring something to fruition of being able to educate our own children in an Afrocentric way, like a distant learning type that we can distribute. And that can bring in contributions, but also you building a relationship with the parent and the child and transforming the mind as far as the way that they deal with education to more of the way that, you know, our Sister Queen is talking about right here.
That sounds to me like a project that could be undertaken under the auspices of the African-Centered Education Task Force is an excellent question. But the answer would be, at this moment, nobody knows, not even her. We don't know, because we haven't given thought to that. But that's an excellent suggestion and would be one of the things that could be taken on as a project, put together a team of 2 or 3 people who would be members of the task force who would go out and ascertain what it would cost to do something like that. And that may just be a step in the direction of bridging the gap that we can't otherwise bridge right now, because we're not in a position to create a network of African-centered schools all across the country. We don't currently have a national network of African-centered educators anymore. So to bridge that gap, what you just suggested may be the perfect, well, maybe not perfect, but certainly an excellent mechanism for beginning that process, and in the process, identifying some more who would become adherents to that approach to do it.
And that's even great, because I've been already looking into it, because I've been wanting to clone myself, but until I can do that, I wanted to be able to do Saturday schools, and so I did a little bit of research about how I can do that distance-wise. You know, and I figured out I can use a whiteboard. There's a place where you can come up with a whiteboard. You know, when you see those videos and people are writing on the whiteboards and you do stuff. So I figured out a way you can do that, because I think that we should have Saturday schools right now. That's a doable thing that anybody can really get students together, because there's so much to education. It doesn't always have to be the 1, 2, 3 ABCs. It's other stuff.
Sister Sean is not here, but she established a relationship with Black Trade Lines. And the brothers who develop Black Trade Lines, they have a platform that's going to be coming out soon with that distance learning, what you're saying right now, on Saturday. So we're already part of it. So it might be something that we might be able to work out with them. Excellent. And then try to put out there. Just put that up. Sister Sean be the person that you will want to talk to get more information on that. She's the one that has the relationship. She's the one that has the tightest relationship with Black Trade Lines.
Yeah, I went on to see their structure. They just don't have a structure of them yet, because I was wondering
curriculum and all that stuff.
Yeah, but they're working on that. So yes, that's definitely the way to go. And I also want to say too, because and so my thought process, my vision and dream, I'm putting this out there into the universe, is I want to open a learning center. And what I mean by a learning center is I want to have a place where we can go and start learning how to do for ourselves in a variety of ways. We can go to a place where we can learn, and it could be like, I don't know if you guys have seen these places where people can bring their kids to play in, or whatever. Do they have anything like that around here where you can like play dates or whatever you want to do?
German place.
Yes.
But you can bring not only your child, but you can come as a parent to learn things like sewing. When I was a young mother, my grandmother taught me how to sew. I know how to teach somebody to sew. It's time for me to pass that on to somebody else. You don't have to spend $30 on some adult outfit for your 3-year-old. We can learn how to make more appropriate things that can help your 3-year-old be 3 and not 30 and not looked at like she's 30. We can teach things like making. We don't manufacture anything. We have to start manufacturing, teaching people how to be entrepreneurs. When I had the center in California, Nia Learning Center, we used the 7 principles to teach stuff. So we had Kaumba Inc., which was an entrepreneurial program, where we got students together. They could write a business plan. We had some of the community pay them for their business plans, give them startup monies. And of course, you're doing kid stuff. They made jewelry, they made pencil holders, but the whole idea was to start them thinking, you're not going to be a worker bee. You're going to be the owner. You're going to be the person who guides the way. And so that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to do again in the Learning Center, but open it up so it's not bound to any governmental regulations, but that it can meet the needs of our people. We need to learn how to do things. We need to learn how to do the stock market. We need to learn all of those things. And so that's my goal. I'm moving to having a learning center where you can come in and learn different languages, learn how to make stuff, do stuff, play, dance, have a safe environment where young people can come and play, where they can have supervision, where we can have parenting classes, because I think that too much sometimes we only want to focus on the child. The child is important, but that child goes home to a family.
That's right.
If that family, I can't say, okay, I want the children to get food stamps, but I'm cutting off the mother and the father.
Yeah.
Really? What does that make sense? Because do you think the mother's going to say, okay, here's your food? And of course, the way that they set the system up now, if you have additional children, they can't get any food, and I'm just going to feed this kid? That's ludicrous. The whole idea is just crazy. So we have to deal with the family and build a family.
That's absolutely true.
Go ahead. Okay, I have a question. A lot of times we hear the word black community bantered about, and you were just talking about family. And I just want you, I think there's a misnomer because you're not a family unless you're working for the interests of the individual members. So if that's the case, then we don't really have black communities. We don't have a lot of families. We have a lot of people who live in houses. And they're individuals living in houses, but they're not really a family. So therefore, you don't have a black community. So I want you to, how would you relate that to the education piece from what we were talking about as far as how do we build up education-wise to get to a black community?
I think that part of that is also in parenting education, as well as when we interact with our young people. We interact with our young people various ways. We let them do sports. We let them engage in other activities that kind of build team spirit. But what we have to do is turn that into building familiar spirit. That means I know us. I care about us. You have families. We have parents. We teach them. So, for example, when I was in the school system, and a lot of crazy stuff happens in the school system. You wouldn't believe it. I can even make it up. But you have, sometimes the things that flash back every day, I'd be like, Lord, I know why this kid cannot read, really. But what we would teach them is, let your neighbor or your friend or your person tell your child, don't break out that window. Without not only that child cussing you out, but the mother coming to cuss you out, the auntie driving across town to cuss you out, all because you were trying to tell that kid, don't break out the window in the place where you live. You live there. This is your floor. Don't put the trash down. So we have to teach them to build that so that I can start, it's the trust factor. We have to go back to the trust factor to build that. Deal with that. Talk about we're not the enemy of each other. They have told us we were the enemy because we can't be trusted. And yes, we have some bad things that happen, but we got to get over that. We have to start having the trust. Like you guys start building when you do that in Philadelphia, which I think we should be doing that in the DC area as well, and everywhere to start building that and taking the chance and trusting each other.
Just a quick story about what you were just talking about, how we need to build a trust in our communities. I work at a school that is, it's good and it's bad because it's a lot of black people in a school, but it's not in any way, shape, or form African centered. And a lot of schools, the schools that are in the area where I work, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Glades. The perfect areas to conduct African centered education, but none of that is going. Even where you have all black administration, predominantly black teachers. 90% of your student population is African American, and we're still educating our children from the standpoint of a Europeanized education system. So I was saying that to say that I'm at a school now where I suspected a student of having a gun in my class last week. So instead of alerting the student that I suspected that he had a gun, I called another teacher's classroom to have her call the security guard, have him call me from her classroom. So he called me. I told him, I think that Nelson has a gun. He said, okay, call the office. Okay, you're security. Why am I handling this problem? So I hang up with him, I call the office. I tell her, I suspect that a student has a gun. I didn't see a gun, but I heard something click in the back of my classroom. I heard another boy say, "Stop clicking it." It wasn't a Rubik's Cube. So, I'm on high alert because we've already had an incident where a student had a gun in the classroom already a couple weeks back. So I hang up with her. She comes out of class. At this point, I'm thinking, oh, this is done. I'm done. My cover is blown. So she calls me out. She asks me about the incident. I tell her the student in question, who I think had the gun, has since gone to another classroom. I suppose, I don't know if he's still on campus or not. All I know is that he's not in my classroom anymore. But the student who he was having a conversation with about this alleged gun was still in my classroom. So she asked me, well, is he still? Yes. Okay, well, let me talk to him. Okay, now I'm really done for. So she pulls him out. They go to the office. He doesn't come back to class. She then calls me out later on into the office. The cops are there now. So the cop asks me again, about the incident. I tell him again, all I heard was a clicking sound, the conversation. He said, so you didn't see a gun? I said, no, I didn't. So the principal, realizing now that she has jumped the gun, so to speak, too soon, because the boy now we know he's off campus. The boy with the gun is gone. He's left campus because obviously his friend has texted him in some way, hey, they're looking for you. So instead of making her, accepting responsibility for the fact that they reacted too soon, oh, I thought you said you saw a gun. I said, no, I specifically said I did not see a gun. So fast forward to now, the students are, I'm hearing around campus, Ms. Haney's a snitch. Now I know that these particular boys, this one boy who I suspected had a gun, I know that he shot someone in the community across the street from my school already. So I know he's not afraid to shoot somebody. So at this point now I'm scared because I know that you made me a target. My administrators made me a target. As soon as she came to my classroom and let it be known, and pulled me out of class and let it be known, Ms. Haney's the one that let it, told the cops. So now I might as well call the cops myself. I expressed my concern to my principal that I was afraid, that I was considering not coming into work. And I texted to her because I like to have documentation. I text her my concerns that I was afraid and that I didn't feel comfortable coming into work. She texted me back and said, okay, well, if you don't ever plan on coming back, just let me know in advance. This is a black woman that I've known. She's a follower of my mother. She's been an educator in the Glades as long as I can remember. She was a teacher at an elementary school when I was in elementary school. And so her response to my fear was, if you don't want to come back, then just tell me before and so it was just, I'm not a reactionary person, so I'm still now, how do I go back to this situation where, and I'm trying not to be reactionary, but how do I go back and work in a school? And the situation still has not been resolved because we know that two of these boys have shot someone, and they come to school every day. Well, they come to school when they feel like coming to school. The situation has still not been resolved. I still do not feel safe going to my job every day. And I know I have a right to feel safe, but I've already been in situations where if you raise too much of a stink, or if you voice your opinion about something, you will lose your job. And I cannot afford to have that happen to me again. So I'm in a position where I want to work with children, but it almost seems as if it's, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't even have the words to express my despair at people who are my elders, who I feel like are supposed to look out for. When you can't go to someone who you would see, who is the same age as my mother, who I feel like should protect me as an educator, then what in the world
Yes.
am I supposed to, because I've had grown men walk into my classroom off the street that I've never seen before. Just walk in and can I help you? Oh no, I'm looking for my cousin. In my class, what? Why are you allowed to just walk on campus and nobody's checking you to see who you are, where you come from? And the security come to find out, I asked the security guard, I mentioned those two men they were here to visit me, they were some prior students. He's like, did they scare you? Yes. Have you not been working at the same location that I've been working at all school year? Yes.
I think that your situation that we're talking about is what I think that when Baba Amafika talks about vetting people to be in charge of something. That sometimes we just can't hire anybody. When we have African-centered education, we just don't hire anybody off the street because you have a credential or that. But we have to have people with the same mindset, which is that the goal is that we all, number one, educate these students, but number two, create this community that's safe and conducive for learning, so that you have brothers there who have your back. All you need to do is say, I need you. We've talked amongst ourselves about what that really means, and not because we have the goal in mind of really doing something to the student who may or may not need to have something done to them, but because we want to have a resolution to the situation so that the student doesn't go away and do something they're not supposed to. They don't come back and do something that they shouldn't be doing that affects you. You don't want to leave the profession altogether because you can't deal with this uncertainty. That's another reason why we have to, when we're collecting people, we can't just collect anybody. We have to collect the people who will. The whosoever will, those are the people we collect to be in the schools. Those are the people who we hire to be our security. Because I think that we take on that mentality that the police have, that we're predators to be feared and to stay away from, as opposed to resolving the situation with the young man. Now, I'm fortunate at PG College because when a strange person comes in, and they do come in sometimes, all I have to do is step out, and the police will come and say, can I speak to you for a minute? And they'll keep them off campus, so I don't even have to worry about that at all. But that's not the same in a public school situation. Because in the adult ed, we don't have to take anything. By law, I don't have to keep on educating you because by law we need to.
Let me interject there, because that's really something that I think you and I need to discuss because it's a local thing. And folks here who are not from Palm Beach County have no clue just how volatile and potentially absolutely dangerous that situation is. This place we call the Glades. That is something we know to take very seriously here, and it would. I don't want to scare the sisters, but
I'm already scared.
That is a dangerous situation out there, and she doesn't have anyone to turn to. If the principal took the position that the principal took in that matter, and if the security person said, well, call the office, instead of coming there and acting like a security person, coming to the classroom and showing a security person presence. But you all don't understand that because you don't know what the Glades is. Now those folks who hear from the Palm Beach County know that.
We have
and help. My heart skipped a beat or two just listening to the story, but I think that's something we will have to deal with locally because you all are too far away to help us on that one. That's something we're going to have to come up with some sort of strategy for how to deal with that situation. So let's move on beyond that.
We do. Well, we have that. We have that. And the only reason I was mentioning.
Let me just say this now. You don't have what we're talking about here. That is she can go up back to school on Sunday, Monday and get shot. That's just how bad that situation is. But I don't want us to spend any time on that because that's a local situation. There's nothing anyone away from here can do to help us, even though their hearts may be there to want to help us. So that's something we have to deal with locally. Well, you and I talk about it. But go ahead.
I had a question I wanted to ask you in regards to some of the strategies that you had suggested. And what I've noticed in being either elementary, middle school, or high school, as educators taking on language that isn't complete. And let me give you an example. Legislation the school district sent out a notice that you couldn't teach grammar and what's the other part of grammar? Punctuation, etc. It's all of it. In isolation.
Phonics. They don't teach phonics either.
Okay, phonics, but that's okay. Now the key to that is in isolation. Our teachers jumped on the bandwagon and stopped teaching it at all. But in the language, it's like when you read No Child Left Behind, if you really read it, you can turn that all the way around. But if you just skim it, like you talked earlier about skimming the Bible, you read just this passage, read the rest of it. Okay? And so in the strategy is to read it completely. Because I taught phonics, grammar, punctuation, right along with the class. Whatever that was going on, and when you formulate, whatever's going on, please read it thoroughly. Because there isn't anything that you want to do in Black or African-centered education that you can't do if you read it. Because there's always a word or two right on page 999. Okay, it's not on page 12. It's on 999. That helps you to just go right through that. And I say it because I'm seeing other people do it. I put it into practice. In explaining, it's called the creative curriculum, the Garner multiple intelligences, okay? The Garner multiple intelligence, he only used 8, but it leveled the playing field of teaching, okay? When you use spatial intelligence and you use those other words, and I'll take you all through that. But when you use those, and definitely when you use creative curriculum simply means take whatever he has right now and incorporate it in the lesson. You don't have to go downstairs and worry about losing your job. You don't have to worry about any of that. Take wherever the child is right here, right now, and incorporate it in the lesson. And that's creative curriculum. So the tools are there, but if we isolate them, or if we only read the surface, and it does take the research. It does take that. And the reason I waited, and that I did wait until the two, both Reggie and you, Laura, had spoken, because sometimes we're fighting something that doesn't need to be fought if we read it. If we really read it. And I know you got a history of teaching it.
Let me, I don't want us to dwell on that too much.
Okay.
And if you're not from here, you don't understand what I'm talking about, but I know.
Oh, I'm not going to
No,
have to.
let me finish. What I want us to do is to move from this point, because we have to deal with that thing locally. But you made a couple of things that, a couple of statements that are critical. One of the things I'd like to ask you to do is to, just for the record, send an email to me and to Jim suggesting that we consider changing the word conscious in our name and in our propaganda to conscientious, because that touched me when I looked at your description and definition. Well, it did. You succeeded. If I wasn't hesitant to be accused of being a dictator, I would have said that you got that. But so to make it at least appear like I'm a Democrat, you put it in writing, and then I'll put it to the group and say, what do y'all think? And when y'all say we all agree, then it will be a collective decision rather than our people's decision. But I love that. I love that, and that's appropriate. And the time couldn't be better to do that. All right? But you do it that way, and we'll take that one, and then we'll run. Let's get one more question or comment before we move on to the next presentation. Somebody hit.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay.
I have a comment. I love the fact that you had in there an exemption for the immunizations. The other exemption you need to put in there is for testing, because learning should be fun. It shouldn't be that the data will show that since all of this testing, the children are getting dumber
Right.
because they're not being educated.
Right.
So that should be an exemption. The other thing that I saw as a business model, I don't know what this other group is doing, but I know that we have already done African-centered education, okay? And I love the idea because more and more children are being educated at home. That's true in public school, that's also true in university situations. You can do online learning. And the other thing is that you get paid the same money as a brick and mortar school. So the idea that we could create some African-centered education,
Virtual school.
virtual schools, okay, and what we would do is register them in every state, so that, because that's your funding source, okay, that's where you're going to get your numbers from, okay, because you don't want to just have it like in one location in Washington, because Florida is not going to pay you for those students. Okay, you want to register it in every single state, okay? And then what you do is those state leaders, okay, what they do is come up with a strategy of how you get your students, okay? Because I was just at a conference, I was telling them people last week, a small doctor's office is now the biggest insurance company in Florida for the children, and it's a Spanish company. And what they do is they go around to the health departments, and they might give them, let's say they need some diapers. They might give them some diapers, and they would, Humana, they'll switch from Humana for that pack of diapers and go to Molina, which is the largest now insurance company. So I love that idea that y'all talking about, okay, because that will be your revenue source. Because no matter how serious all of us are, you have to be able to live.
That's right.
Okay, and when you're able to register in each one of those states, you got a guaranteed funding source for the organization, guaranteed. Because you're going to get whatever rate that state. So if California is paying $15,000 a student, just think, you don't need but 10, okay? And if we had them in each one of them, and if we, you know, because we have masters, teachers, okay, like Harriet Ball. Harriet Ball, she's dead now, but Harriet Ball could teach a monkey how to do math. Okay, and she did it in an Afrocentric way. She had the children, she had dance moves. Teacher didn't sit down. 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? And so we have masters who can teach, and they're already on videotapes. You know, so we could buy into some of this, and we could do African-centered education on the computer, and have a good revenue stream. That's all I wanted to say, but your presentation was wonderful.
I just want to ask though, for just a couple people to share what they thought was what education was for. I just want to see what you thought in the beginning. What do you think? Go ahead.
I wrote down education is supposed to enlighten, motivate, and promote excellence among the populace through administration of topics and subjects relevant to our past, present, and future.
Good. Anybody else? What you got?
I have to provide me with the necessary tools I need to succeed in life.
Okay. Anybody else got something?
I put down to experience learning, self-development, and to contribute to society.
Anybody else?
I can create critical thinking, empower, teach holistically principles about language, history, culture, morals, character, politics, art, science, etc.
See, we already know what we need. Did you see that even before I did the presentation? We already know what we need to do for ourselves, which is why this is so critical. This is so critical. So I want us to make this African-centered consortium to pull together every state so that we can have this think tank to accomplish what we already know we need. Thank you.
And what I'd like us to do to support Sister Chandra's initiative every one of you in your respective states, whether you are the state rep or just a person who is a member who resides in a state where we don't have a state rep, let's, as a committee of one, seek out and recruit some prospective members, specifically who would be a part of the education task force and help Sister Shandra with this massive mission. Because this whole, as an educator myself, I've dealt with it where the rubber meets the road. Not from the theoretical or the philosophical standpoint, a safe distance away. That's why I know what the system, but they had people used to threaten me, but see, Mr. Gay, you could pack, so you don't come in my place, talking no smack, because I'll send you back to the white people, and if you don't act right, I'll send you back there on a stretcher, because I ain't here to be trifled with. These brothers can tell you, I didn't play, nobody come play with me. So that's a dangerous situation there, but we got to deal with that. But I want us to do what we can do, and that is act as a committee of one to recruit folks to be a part of our African-centered education task force so that these excellent ideas and suggestions don't go for naught. You see? Let's do something about it.
Christian schools are already doing. When I was in 5th and 6th grade, I was in private school, and when you're a child, you're taught to stay in a child's place, and so I didn't question that the women that were my teachers were educators. My mom was educated. I knew my mom went to school and she got a degree. I had no idea that the reason that my teacher was on tape, which I went to school every day, sat in the classroom, and I watched a video. Every class that I had was on video, and the woman who sat in my classroom, her only purpose was to make sure that I paid attention to the video. It's called it's a Christian it's a Becca program. Mm-hmm. My entire curriculum, my math, science, reading, of course we had a Bible class because it was a Christian-centered school, but every class was on tape. And that was in the 5th grade. What? So, and they're still using the Becca program right now. And they still use those same videotapes. The school is in Pensacola. So
again, pardon the interruption, but again, none of that will matter unless we recruit people to help make it happen. Right. See, okay, it's a good idea, let's do it. Right. You see, just to talk about it, there's nothing we can talk about that I haven't heard us talk about before. So the question is, do we move from the talking stage to the doing stage? All right, so we have some excellent ideas that have been presented. Yes. The way to get that done is, again, everybody consider themselves a committee of one to help recruit in your respective areas some new additions to Sister Chandra's African-centered education task force. Then we have the capacity, at least the human capacity. We still would have to get the financial resources to go with the human capacity, but once we get the human capacity, we can at least begin the research kind of work that will go into determining what the scope and depth and breadth of such a distance learning concept could be. And then we can figure out how to go after some money to do it. But that's the first step is what we can do. And that is to recruit some folks to be on our education task force.
So everybody who mentioned that, I expect to see some beings. Is it going to ping me when they sign up?
There you go.
I need to be pinged. All right.
I got one coming to you next week.
All right.
All right. Yeah, I like that. That's excellent presentation. You didn't have to be concerned about following anybody.
Okay.
Quality stuff. Okay, the next person up then would be Brother Andre, because Mac is not here.
He said he's coming.
Yeah, but he has a business, so we'll put him down later on the agenda. I love that thing about conscientious versus conscious.
All right, now. And I was saying I didn't want to say something about it. Hopefully if I show it.
You know how to float it out there.
Do you need answers?
Yes.
So he needs to. I'm trying to close my thing out what will allow me to get.
Okay, Brother Hunt, all right. Make sure you stay in contact with your sister then, all right? Okay, all right. All right, glad you made the call. No problem. All right, take care. Drive careful.
Have a good one.
Brother Hart.
Yes, sir.
Well, hold on a minute. I might as well do this. You got a minute?
Yes, sir.
Let me do this now before because I don't want to let anybody leave before we do this. I told y'all that Jim and I want y'all to retire us.
Tuesday.
Y'all be struggling, right? So just in case y'all thought that Brother Amafika was selling wolf tickets, I want y'all to know what I'd already done here. I want you to assume the position. And the rest of you young heads,
Carry on.
male and female alike.
That's right.
White, someone parked in a white
Oh, that's.
Dodge.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'll come back to you.
So y'all noticing now the kind of talent, skill, and ability we got?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's by design. We dropped that baton, bro.
When you share information, you try to look at
The one that's just leaving?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Hard, H-A-R-D-E-N.
Right now, we're checking that. Yeah, we're cutting the park down. And the next time, I'll probably go over to, one of these contract ones I might decide, either Comcast or, but I do customers that will support on,
Yeah, he just waited till my wife come back. Okay. She had to go move the car for somebody, and she wanted to be here when he started.
Well, actually,
Would you give me a hug on that country?
All right now.
it's more geared for people who have.
Go for development, right?
It's geared more for college people, I didn't know.
Conscious yesterday is conscientious today, right?
That's it. That's it. Conscious serves its purpose.
You was listening, right? Yeah, boy. Conscientious.
Okay.
That is a basically TurboTax, with black owned.
Okay.
And I think this platform is like the biggest.
Nobody else.
Yeah, check it out. You already doing that work. You already doing that work for tax related companies. That's
Yes.
when you get in with him.
Oh.
He's already
But on that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, because I was saying, how can you?
I need to see what time do I have to leave the day to the airport? What flight you did, 8:30?
Oh, okay.
You live today? Scotty V.
Excuse me, first name is Henry. Henry Hart.
I'm not going to do it any fellow. So like how you have blog you like what you were doing as far as the advertising and this other chart. You know,
As we wait for my wife to come back in so the brother Andre can start, y'all remember now.
Jaden's birthday is yesterday too.
All right, all right.
It's Laura's youngest.
Okay. As you know, we mentioned several times yesterday that there's nothing common to man that man cannot do, and that the only proof that you need that human beings are capable of doing the things that some human beings have already done. So if there is any example of any of a people, whoever those people may be, who have been in a condition which they themselves might define or describe as being as bad, or in their minds even worse than ours, and yet they have overcome that condition, then it certainly bears study to see what, if anything, about their experience, which was apparently successful, that might be applicable for us to use, or what portion, what aspects of it in that thing. So I asked Brother Andre, since black folks are probably most familiar with Jews outside of our own selves, because even Jews have even been a buffer between black folks and the other white folks. So the thing, we want to take a look at them analytically and see how they pulled it off. Yep. And what about that we might appropriate and use for ourselves. So.
She's back.
She's back.
She's filling in, right?
Oh, I see. She sneaked up on me.
No, we're gonna start now. As soon as, okay. All right. So let's get started. This is